All right. So more information security program development, mostly talking about internal and external, about external partnerships today, and then some event monitoring. So, all right. So you have external partnerships. You're going to have them with law enforcement agencies and a lot of other people. Law enforcement agencies you need to have some contacts with, and InfraGard and the High Tech Crime Investigators Association are good groups to get into and get involved with. So you have law enforcement contacts. And if you're international, it would be Interpol. I'm in both of them, but not Interpol. Anyway, so and then of course you've got regulators and auditors. Some people see auditors as a hostile force, but there's no point in that. All they're doing is making sure that you're really doing everything right. And if you just do things right, then they're not your enemies. But you do have to understand that they are there sort of like law enforcement people to measure what you're doing and to punish your company if you're not doing the right thing. So you have to be aware of that. So that's the PCI Standards Council, Cloud Security Alliance, ISO, and ICE. Those are organizations that have standards, and you will have a degree of auditing involved in proving that you are complying with those standards. Then, of course, the professional organizations we talked about, like ISACA, making the standard that this class is about, the CISM certification, ISA, ISC squared, that manages the CISSP and many other certifications, Cloud Security Alliance, EC Council, that does certified ethical hacker, which the military likes and almost nobody else, but it is a step on the forward as a pen tester, and SANS, which is very widely respected by everyone with their GIAC certifications that everyone greatly respects, but the classes are very expensive. That's the only downside there. And then you have to have contact with professional services vendors, people that will help you secure your company. And if you get involved in a security management position, you will just have an endless chain of vendors calling you, trying to sell you stuff. And you have to develop productive relationships with the ones you can trust and know which ones to ignore. So you got a lot of vendors. They're always bringing up new products. They're constantly going broke and being replaced by new ones. Their products are constantly getting hacked. The companies are constantly merging with other companies. So it is quite a challenge to keep up with it all and make intelligent decisions about what to buy and what to have in your network. All right, and then there's compliance management. This is just making sure that you are obeying whatever the rules are, and the rules might be your own policies, but when they talk about compliance, they're mostly talking about compliance with external rules like SOC 2 and PCI DSS. So some companies really want to focus on doing their work, like might be baking brownies, and they really see security as a waste of their time. So they just want to do the bare minimum to satisfy the compliance agency, which they see as like a hostile waste of their time, and then focus on doing their main product. And that's called compliance-based security, where you just try to do the minimum to not get punished and then ignore it. And the alternative is to actually try to protect your data because you do care about the data and you really don't want to get hacked. And that's, of course, what doing all those procedures described in this book and what the certification are if you want to really secure a company. But it is a thing to be aware of that a lot of companies don't really care about really securing things. They just want to check the box and move forward. So you'll have to figure out which standards apply to your business. And so HIPAA might apply to your medical records and so on. Different standards will apply to the different parts of your company. And you have to figure out which standards you must obey, just like you have to obey labor laws and tax laws. So there's compliance risk. This is the risk of harm to your company from failing to comply. One risk is you'll get fines and sanctions and lawsuits and things like that. The other risk is you'll actually have a breach. And then you'll have, so I mean, typically fines and sanctions are not lawsuits. They're just an official fine for not being compliant. But if you actually get breached, then there's reputation loss and lawsuits and such. So you have various degrees of enforcement where you try to monitor your own performance and see if you're in compliance before an external auditor catches you not being in compliance. And that's the best way to stay compliant. As I mentioned before, when I worked in the financial industry, we had a very good internal audit team. We would audit everything thoroughly ourselves. So we made sure that we had done everything right before anybody outside came in. And when the external auditors came in, it was an easy, simple job. All they had to do was look at our audit and verify it. because we're really trying to do a good job. We were not trying to do a bad job and cover it up. So then there's personnel issues. You have to retain talent and find it. This is extremely difficult. People are constantly complaining about a shortage of cybersecurity talent. In the compliance area, it tends to be a boring job, and a lot of cybersecurity people leave to go get a more exciting job. But of course, you need them. And so when often you recruit from inside your company is one way to do it. So you specify what your workers do by roles and responsibilities. A role is the position you have in the company, like security manager or security analyst, and responsibility is the tasks you have to perform, like weekly scans and such. And so your security manager analyzes the activities that must be done and then groups them along with skill levels and such, and then gives them roles and job titles to plan what roles are necessary here and how we're going to fill them. And you might have to write up a job description, which is something you use to advertise the job so you can hire. All right, and then eventually you end up with a culture. As we talked about, your company has traditions, attitudes, communication styles, and so on, and you have to improve the security posture of a company while fitting into the culture. You can't come barging in and expect to overturn all their habits. You must have constant professional development. It's required to hold your certifications because you're protecting them against intelligent enemies, and the enemies will keep changing their attacks. Most companies do not have any effective career path. This is why most everybody leaves to move to another company every 2 years. Typically people, if they work at the job, they either decide to put in minimal effort and just coast and not expect to get no advancement and just wait for retirement. That's one thing. But if they're ambitious and energetic, then they are learning new things, getting certifications, and they expect to move forward. And usually they cannot get promoted at their existing company because that position is full. So they jump to another company to move up. That's extremely common. Only a few companies are forward thinking enough to actually provide an internal career path and promotion. Google does this, and I know DriveSavers does this, but most companies don't think of this. And so their most talented staff is constantly leaving the company. So you can specialize in a lot of things like forensic or cryptography or engineering or mobile device security. There's many, many things to do. And then you can collect certifications. Security Plus just shows general interest in security as the first step. And then things like GIAC for pen testers and CEH move you forward. And then the CISSP is the one almost everybody in this business has to have. Especially anybody in management, but really they kind of expect everybody who's any kind of professional in security to have a CISSP. There's a lifestyle professional too for software development. And there's the ISACA certifications like CISM and CISA and risk one as well. And then every vendor makes certifications. There are just hundreds of them, literally. Checkpoint, guidance software that makes, I think, FTK, Radware, Metasploit, White Hat, Cisco, Microsoft, everybody makes all these vendor certifications in handling just their product. And that's another thing you will collect as you move forward. I do not know when next semester enrollment starts. I know they have not published the schedule yet. Anyway, so this is the big issue. Most companies, the most common thing companies do is they refuse to pay for any training for their staff. And so their staff just gets training on the side and then leaves. If they do, they provide like 1 or 2 weeks of training a year. It is an issue. If you do pay for your staff, provide your training for your staff, then they will expect to get promotions after they learn new things. So this is a thing to think about. DriveSavers is the model of this, I think. They give everyone 6 weeks of training a year in the cutting edge technologies and they promote them. And I met people that had been there for 20 or 30 years because there is no point going anywhere. If you're an expert in how data is stored on drives and how to recover it, there is nowhere else to go. They are the industry leaders and they really treat their staff very well and they really are experts in it. And that's one way to go. Splunk is very similar. I know very sharp people that worked at Splunk and left and then came back to Splunk saying there's no point going somewhere else. They really are the leaders. They really treat you well and you don't need to leave. But most companies are not that organized on how to retain their talent. So I got some Kahoots. Should be in another window. There they are. All right. 4D1. All right. More seconds. All right. All right. Who made the CISSP? All right. That's the CISSP is ISC squared. Let me just check something here. Yeah, okay. I'm on the right track. Good. All right. Not ISACA, which is ISC squared. All right. Running weekly scans. What's that? Right, that's a responsibility. All right. All right. Which one covers software development? Software license professional. Software lifecycle professional. All right. And which one is from SANS? All right. That's the GIAC. Is a real name. Other people have to tell me who they are. All right. All right. I see them, both of them. All right. Fair enough. All right. So, project and program management. A project is something you do to change something in your company, like rolling out new desktop computers or something. And so it's something that involves a group. And a program is a group of projects. And you can get project manager certification and so on. And that's also quite valuable. So you've got a budget. You have to include everything that takes money. Yeah, training is part of the projects too. Yeah. Anyway, so you got your training, your equipment cost, documents and records, contingencies, and so on. These are all part of your project plan. And the company executives will want to see a return on investment. Now, normally, if you do something like roll out a new product or open a new data center, it costs money, but then you have some increased profit coming from that, and that's called a return on investment. And they don't want to do anything unless you can demonstrate that it will return more money than it costs. And this is a huge problem for security programs because they typically don't improve your income at all. So they say, you want to give our staff all security awareness training. Well, then how many more products are we going to sell because of that? And the answer is zero. And they say, well, you're just throwing money away for nothing. It's hard to get this past the executives that are balancing the sheet. And that's the problem. So typically you sell it by fear. They're afraid they're going to get hacked. So you say, we're going to lower that risk. But you know, it's not as good as if you could make a business case where you could actually prove how much money you're going to save by being more secure. And that is a big tension in the business. So what you do is you make a business case as best you can. You have to explain why you want to do something that's going to cost money and explain what benefits it has. They would like you to say how much money it's going to make, but if you can't say that, you have to have other justifications. The first step is a feasibility study, which is this a thing we can reasonably do at all? And that just defines whether this is even worth talking about or if it's just ridiculous. And if it is feasible, then you can move on and say, we have a problem, we check, and it is not outrageous for us to plan to solve it in this fashion. And then you can figure out what's going on here, how much money would we get, how much would it benefit our company, how much would it cost, how long will it take, how are we going to measure if it's succeeded, and what risks will it bring? And that is part of the business case, which they then consider and decide whether to allow you to invest in your proposal. Another big issue is vendor management. I mentioned before, you got to have, you have to buy a lot of products. In fact, most professional security administrators say they spend most of their time managing security products. They buy some big security product, and then they spend their time managing how that product is being used on the network. So you have to have vendors you can talk to who will help you get the right product for your business and not just try to trick you into buying whatever has the highest profit margin for them. All right. And so you've got security program operations is a new topic, and the only part I'm doing here is event monitoring and vulnerability management. These other topics will be later. So event monitoring is a big thing. All your devices make logs, the firewalls, servers, and routers, and everything, and you want to review those logs. It used to be that people just had to read through the logs on some daily activity. Now we perform real-time monitoring using SIEM systems. So you have a centralized log management. There's an agent on every device that sends the data over the network to a central repository, and the SIEM is the single unit service that lets you search through all the logs, and the industry leader, the most expensive and most respected product is Splunk. This is what you use to search through all those log entries, or you use one of the cheaper products that do essentially the same thing with less add-ons and convenience, like Logarithm and Elk. And so your SIEM system can take not only all the logs from all your devices, it can also be connected to intelligence feeds you subscribe to that tell it about attackers. So it can connect the IP addresses of known malicious websites and the tactics, techniques, and procedures of known threat actor groups and tie it right into your SIEM so you can figure out who's attacking you, in addition to exactly what happened as you detect attacks and plan how to deal with them. Orchestration is another good feature of your system. You can have an automated response to something where you can choose from a list of responses or even automatically take responses when certain things happen. This is one way to have a quick response to some attacks. All right, and then there's vulnerability management, which has been around a lot longer. And this is examining your systems for vulnerability, for example, by just running a scan or perhaps paying an internal team like a red team or a purple team to analyze your software and find its vulnerabilities. And so you find things and then have some plans how to remediate them. You can use a scanning tool, find the open ports, check the versions of services, see if you have all the patches you should have. You can run source code scanning tools that will look for errors in programming that are recognized vulnerabilities. And so you can do this on some periodic basis. The results are typically scored with the CVSS system, which rates every vulnerability from 0 to 10, where 10 is the most serious. That's sort of the universal language for this. It is not, unfortunately, a very scientific number. It's not true that that number maps clearly to an amount of money lost or anything. It's just a relative scale, but most people take the 10s very seriously and don't really pay attention to much below about 4. So you deliver these results to the asset owners, and then they hopefully remediate it. And when they come to the next scan, hopefully you'll find they have made it better. As that's the CVSS, like I say, it's got a mathematical formula, but you're just rating things like exploitability, complexity, and impact to determine how dangerous something is. So there's automated tools where you just run a vulnerability scanner. It just runs a series of pre-programmed tests and gives you a report. That's easy to do, but it's not very penetrating. Then there's a real penetration test where you have real trained humans come in and try to break into the system and tell you how they got in. If you get highly skilled penetration testers, that is much more valuable, but also more expensive. Another thing a lot of people do now is social engineering assessments where they send phishing emails to their own staff periodically and have a system of knowing which staff members will click on a link in an email, and then you can train them or something like that. You can try to lower their vulnerabilities to that. This is a very common activity these days because that's the normal way attackers get in, is with phishing. They send emails, somebody in your company clicks on a link, and now I have remote control of one system in your machine, and then I expand out from there. So patch management is another huge issue. All your products have patches coming out and you have to deploy the patches, but a lot of the patches cause problems, so you have to test them first. So most companies, at least a few years ago, the typical company was 120 days behind on their patches, which means you're vulnerable for all that time period unless you have compensating controls. So it is a big issue to plan how you're going to deploy patches and make sure they get deployed in a timely manner. It's quite a chore, and people use automated tools to make sure that everything is patched. The simplest one, of course, is a Windows domain controller, where you can make sure that every machine that connects is up to a certain level of patching. But you can't just push out all the patches as soon as they come out, because nobody, not even Microsoft, makes good patches. A lot of Microsoft patches cause problems, so you have to test them thoroughly first. Anyway, got another Kahoot, which is here. Oh, I got to hit another button. All right. All right. All right. Maybe that's it. I guess so. All right. What part has the timeline? Project plan, okay. All right, what does Splunk do? It's a SIM, security information and event management. It does not scan things, it just collects log information so you can search through it. All right, which one gives you a numerical value for security flaw? That's the Common Vulnerability Scoring System, CVSS numbers, universally used. All right, and where would you find the IP address of a foreign attacker? threat intelligence. All right, we're using that in the IR class. Yeah. All right, okay. And so search we've had before, and VU. And good. And it told me who he is. This one here. All right, good. So I got the scores. All right, I'm going to stop this one and process it, and then I'll proceed